Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to the Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan. The world is once again at a crossroads regarding its future. Re-globalization versus deglobalization, more cooperation going forward, or more confrontation. Now, welcome to Tongzhou for the first ever Tongzhou Global Development Forum, which attracted the whole range of senior policymakers, diplomats, and scholars. CGTN is invited to attend this forum, and we caught up with some of the attendees. What do you make of the significance of the Xi-Biden summit in San Francisco?
Well, it's a great meeting, and it's much better than one can expect it. I first want to applaud the two heads of state. Despite this very difficult environment, a lot of challenges, a lot of risks, they reach this kind of summit. And especially President Xi Jinping, you can see there are a lot of concerns, there are a lot of uncertainties, and also some interest groups may always create the problem. But you look back that over the past 6 months, it's a very clear map. First, invite Bill Gates and Dr. Kissinger. These are the non-government people, emphasize people-to-people diplomacy, create a good environment. But if you early on invite some officials, probably will be different atmosphere. Then invite the 4 cabinet members, especially Janet Yellen and also John Kerry, really talk about importance of financial cooperation and the climate change. Then the Commerce Secretary also had a successful visit. Then the Senator Schumer and the bipartisan delegates, because as we know, the Congress is really quite anti-China. So that move certainly also challenges some of the unanimous views about China in the U.S. Congress. But also then the highlight is the governor of California, because he played a very, very important role in the visit. You can see from the arrangement. Then the 2 Chinese officials, senior officials, Wang Yi and He Lifeng, visit the U.S. This is a great map. You're looking back. If the sequence changes, the things will change. So it's a brilliant move, but also deliver an excellent speech and receive a very respectful welcome by various interest groups and by President Biden and his team. That's wonderful. Now for Biden also, it's very, very interesting. So sometimes I wonder whether he invited Xi Jinping and the current kind of China unfriendly American domestic politics, whether he behaved that as a president of the U.S. or as a candidate for the next election. So I think that probably somewhere both play an important role. But most importantly, I think both leaders understand the importance of peace, because that the Asia-Pacific region is now, it sounds like an arms race, particularly Japan and South Korea on board, and there's a tendency to establish so-called the Asia version of NATO. This will be a disaster for the region, because that region maintained 40 years of peace, but now could be in jeopardy. But also that as we know, that the Taiwan local election will be coming, and certainly there's a lot of concern, and not so much about intended move, but unexpected incidents, as like both presidents mentioned. But the real highlight in this visit, I believe that is on the AI. I think it's not fully announced. I expect that probably somewhere, sometimes in the near future, both leaders will announce the agreement or the move to promote dialogue in the AI, particularly human control of nuclear weapons in the AI era. This will be fantastic achievement because we know that there's some deterrence in the nuclear age, but in the AI age, it's a mess. When you can argue that this will be eventually will be machine to machine, this will be devastating for humanity. So if the 2 leaders of the 2 most powerful AI countries can reach agreement in this area, the implication, the achievements is really extremely important.
Do you think this meeting will somehow put a floor on the downward spiral of China-US relations? Or do you think the problems, more like structural problems, will resurface? They're destined to resurface over time.
Well, as you know, that I see U.S.-China relations is not a free fall. Free fall is like doomed to be a conflict. I think any military conflict should be and can be avoided. But the U.S.-China relation certainly a downward spiral. But this one is try to stabilize. It's not the objective to return to the previous track like 6 or 7 years ago, because the world has changed. Particularly American politics has changed. And so I think you mentioned about structure. This is I have been writing all the time in the past 2 or 3 years. It's nothing to do with individual leaders, although individual leaders are very, very important. And it's to do with the structural challenges, particularly on the U.S. side. For the 3 reasons. One is that the U.S. never experienced this kind of challenges, all comprehensive, militarily, economically, science, technology, you name it. So they feel insecure. This is number one. Compared with the Cold War, the Soviet Union was not that kind of comprehensive challenge. Number 2, related with American domestic situation. If American is in good shape, they don't care about the different political system, different ideology, different economic model. But the U.S. is in trouble in terms of bipartisan, vicious partisan politics and economic disparity and ethnic tensions, even cultural war, you name it. So you become even more sensitive about the different model and different political system. So this will not disappear in the near future. And lastly, Chinese middle class from not existed 30-some years ago to now become the largest middle class country in the world with 400 million people belong to the middle class. Even the COVID situation did not change too much. But the US middle class is shrinking from 70% after World War II to 61% in 1970s, now to less than 50%. My colleague at Brookings had a report talking about male workers, their salary, average salary, even lower than 50 years ago. So that explains these people, they supported Donald Trump in the first place. That explains Biden wanted to lift the trade tariff, but could not do that because working class, middle class oppose it. Now they wrongly believe that the Chinese people probably eat our lunch because Chinese middle class is expanding. Now this is wrong perception, but you can understand where they come from. All these 3 things come together, meaning it's very, very difficult to change. But despite all these problems or challenges, I think both leaders are determined to avoid major mistakes, and particularly war and peace, but also China emphasized even economic domain. You decouple relocation will not serve American interests, and certainly will hurt the U.S. So let's make the cake bigger. And China wants to continue to open, welcome American firms, and the business community's warm welcome in that banquet certainly reflects that. So not like some people said that the business group want to withdraw China, but the reality is it's some of the people in the U.S. Congress want to restrain, actually this is things is you really not help your own company. So I think that message resonated very well. But we also should know that the information is not symmetrical. Now, what we receive and the American people receive may be different. At the moment, America obsessed with the 2 possible wars, American involvement, maybe even more conflict in the world. So I think that the Xi Jinping's message certainly will resonate well in some of the sectors in American society. Hopefully, his emphasis on people-to-people exchanges, especially young people's exchanges, will carry a long way to improve relationship in the years to come.
This leader summit in San Francisco between President Xi and President Biden culminated in this San Francisco vision. And Foreign Minister Wang Yi also said there are agreements on a whole host of issues covering some 20 areas of cooperation. You've been studying this relationship for decades. What is the prospect of it going forward?
If, for example, Taiwan local election will move in a way not good for DPP, and will return to President Ma Ying-jeou or Taiwan leader Ma Ying-jeou's era, then some hawkish people will not let that happen, including those some in Taiwan and some in the U.S. Congress. So there will be a lot of challenges. I think the very, very important thing is that the top leaders, White House and Beijing, will continue to work together, not let this kind of political interest or interest group hijack the very important bilateral relationship, the most important bilateral relationship. So this is a matter of war and peace. This is a matter of economic prosperity at the time the whole world faces economic challenges. So I think that the US and China are also financial power and economic power. So this will be great message, not only for people in China, people for US, but also for what we call the third party, EU, ASEAN countries, and beyond. So I think that, of course, the summit is just over a few days ago, but I think the impact will be with us for the coming weeks and months. But the important thing is that I think both sides, the top leaders, are also understand that some people may not be happy with the result, but the important thing is we should work together rather than work against each other.
Uncertainty is a prominent feature of our era, and finding opportunities for development remains a challenge for the whole world. People have been talking about this special relationship between the UK and the US, which have been echoed and articulated by successive administrations in Washington and London. Does that mean the UK will follow in the footsteps, follow in lockstep with the United States militarily and strategically when it comes to dealing with China, or somehow in some areas the UK going forward will have sort of its own strategic autonomy, if you will?
Yes, Britain has long been a close ally of the United States. We're members of NATO, but of course NATO relates to Europe. It doesn't relate to China. I think one of the big problems potentially is the protectionism in American trade policy started by Trump. Britain is an open trading economy. And if Trump were to return and go back to this kind of nationalistic economic policy, there will be a big divergence with Britain and the United States, probably the first time for a long time. And certainly as somebody who is pro-European, I want to see Britain strengthening its relationship again with other countries in Europe. And there's an element of strategic autonomy there.
Let's talk about China-UK relations, and one that you helped engineer when you were leading the real economy of the UK, when you were the president of the board of economic departments. Talking about the golden era, shifting from that to where we are today, how do you look at this evolution?
Well, we had a high point, which is when President Xi came to London, and a lot of good business and other transactions were done. We've had continuing high levels of visit from overseas students from China. I think it was very badly disrupted by the pandemic, the breakdown in communications, and we've been affected by the overall cooling of relations with the West and China. And in the case of the UK, a particular issue was, of course, Hong Kong, because a lot of Hong Kongers are British nationals, so that did sour relationship. But I think recently there's improvement. The foreign minister cleverly came here recently and made it very clear we want to have positive, constructive, good relations with China. So we may not get back to the golden era, but maybe a silver era, so a restoration of good relations we had before.
So in your book, Secretary Cable, The Chinese Conundrum, Engagement or Conflict, published or republished rather in 2021, you said there could be two approaches, two paths towards the future regarding China. Can you elaborate?
Well, basically I was setting out two scenarios because we can't forecast the future. We don't know the future. But the world could go in different directions, and one of them is what I call Davos China, in which China engages with the world economy, continues opening up. It makes for more foreign investment, more inward investment into China. This is all welcome. It plays a big role in global institutions as well as the global South. And this is all a kind of welcome, continued opening up. But there is an alternative future, which is potentially worrying, what I call Sparta China, because of the language of the Thucydides trap, in which there becomes a preoccupation with security, and security takes preference over continued economic growth and well-being. And it's mutually reinforcing, because as the West becomes obsessed by security, so does China, and you get into a conflict situation. I hope we will avoid that, and I think that the discussions with President Xi and Mr. Biden give the possibility that we see a Davos China as a much more fruitful alternative.
How do you see the competing, the clashes between the camp that says there should be more re-globalization and the other camp that is still advocating for deglobalization, and their clashes?
Yeah, I think the origins of this lay in the financial crisis in 2008, because for half a century we'd had more or less continued expansion without economic crisis. Then the banks collapsed, we have serious economic trouble in many countries, including UK. And it's had the effect of making the general public in many countries much more frightened of engagement internationally, worrying about the impact on their standard of living, and so countries have started to put up barriers. Of course, Trump led a lot of that process with very negative consequences. And I think we have to get back to accepting that international trade, investment flows, globalization is good for the world and good for our two countries.
In a world faced by profound challenges, including climate and geopolitical crises, many agree that creating more global public good should be a priority.
You were leader of Romania, a country that fully appreciates and understands the consequences of great power rivalry for decades, with the clashes between the Soviet sphere of influence versus those of NATO, the US, and the West. What will be your message to those who don't even care about whether the United States and China can veer into conflict or can veer into another type of a Soviet-US major power conflict?
Let me stress the fact that in 1971, Romania helped organizing the visit of American President Nixon to China. So Romania had a very positive role during those years. Well, now I think it is important for countries like Romania and others to follow and to encourage well, a kind of development in the bilateral relations between China and the United States. And my message is for those who are following us that, well, the world needs dialogue, not confrontation. And I think that, well, talking about the Thucydides trap, China is not Athens, and the Americans should learn that. China is not interested in having military expansion. China is interested much more, as I understand, in organizing economic projects like the Belt and Road. So this has to be better explained.
Let's talk about China. Romania has been experimenting with its own paths towards modernization and prosperity since many, many decades ago, and now you're in China. You've been coming to China for decades. How do you look at the Chinese path to modernization?
The Chinese decided in a very wise way that modernization does not mean westernization. So it was a problem that we had in Romania too, starting from the 19th century and then in the beginning of the 20th century and later on. So we asked ourselves, which is the best way to modernize our society? Looking to foreign countries to take a model from outside, from the West, or to look backwards to the history, culture, traditions of Romania. And I think that, in fact, China did something very smart. So that's why in Romania we don't have this kind of, let's say, stubborn idea that only what comes from Washington or from Brussels is good. So we have our own ideas also, we have our own values, and we would like to contribute also in sharing our experiences with other countries. And we think the same, China did the same, and I think this is quite natural and easy to be understood. And well, I remember that President Obama at a certain moment in the UN said, when we have tried to impose our democratic model in the north of Africa, we missed important opportunities to develop those societies and our relations with those societies, the Arab Spring and all those periods. So I think we have to understand from the mistakes which have been made. And China, of course, after 100 years of bad experiences with the West, of course, now it's in a situation when it can share its own values, its own experience with other countries in a positive way, and also in the economic way through a very important project, which is Belt and Road, which at this moment represents perhaps the most ambitious project of infrastructure in the world.
You like the project, the idea?
I think it is excellent. It is an important decision, and it is very interesting that while the Americans decoupled in a way from the global economic order, China became the best advocate of globalization. And this is, well, a different approach, well, in comparing with what was happening, let's say, 1-2 decades ago.
Besides the Belt and Road Initiative, Chinese President also proposed other important initiatives that is contributing to global development and to creating a multipolar world.
Professor Han, tell us a bit about what you're doing right now, and how would you describe the working relationship, both on the professional level and perhaps the personal level too, between UNESCO and China?
I'm right now the regional director of UNESCO based in Beijing, and I'm representative to China, also to Japan, to South Korea, the Republic of Korea, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and Mongolia. So it's a very interesting region, and especially our work in China is very, very critical because we have a wonderful partnership with the Chinese government on many issues, including education, where we are promoting, for example, girls and women education, where the First Lady, Excellency Madam Pang, is the special envoy, and President Xi has a special emphasis about world heritage, about natural heritage, and our partnership on heritage and culture is very special. Also in science and technology, and in the areas related to water management, which I have been working on for more than 20 years in China. It's a very special area, the areas of environment, where we have UNESCO biosphere reserves, UNESCO natural heritage sites. We are working together on issues of biodiversity, for example, from Kunming to Montreal, as you know, the Convention on Biodiversity and the national parks, very special in China, but at the same time, geoparks and geoheritage and intangible heritage. So China has the highest number of intangible heritage elements in the world, and very high number, second only in the world right now, 57 World Heritage Sites. So China is a very, very strong partner of UNESCO, and Chinese people, I'm really very delighted that wherever I go, they know UNESCO very well, and the philosophy which have evolved for more than 2,000 years with Confucius, more than 5,000 years with the river culture between the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. So it's a very beautiful, I would say, collaboration about people-to-people exchanges, about shared prosperity, about sharing knowledge, about ecological civilization. How can we bring what is best in China to the world, and what is best in the world to China with knowledge exchanges and having more friendships with people with difficulties in many of the areas, and people who are making excellent progress.
You've been here for nearly 3 years. How do you find the traditional Chinese cultural elements, Chinese philosophies, in perhaps reviving this campaign of making the environment, the society a better place?
Chinese have always lived very closely with environment, and that's something very beautiful. Like I recently learned about Shang, Shan, Ro, Shui. Yeah, it's like the greatest virtue is water. And a water expert, I feel like water is a metaphor here. But really, Chinese have lived with the environment for long and learned to live with the environment for long. Ecological civilization is basically an evolution over a long period of time. So this is from Laos, then Confucius, and then of course coming all the way through different civilizations. And that's where the power of culture, like Grand Canal, you know, is a very interesting, I would say, engineering structure, but it shows the care for water. It links several rivers, including Yangtze and Yellow River, from south all the way to the north to the Beijing, and how we have taken care of it over a period of time. Not the transport of goods and services, but at the same time, it has also linked the cities. It has created cultural linkages. So learning over a period of time, and coming back to the Chinese philosophy, and now ecological civilization, the concept President Xi Jinping has given, is a very important thought, a very important area, how you bring ecological management with the civilization, which is the way we live. So, and also we also call it the principles related to sustainable development, social, economic, environmental. But a very important element is culture. So bringing social, economic, environmental and cultural elements together, that brings the ecological civilization and has the link with the nature and bringing harmony with the diversity. These are very important concepts.
Talking about multilateralism, cultural integration is a part of it. What do you think of President Xi's Global Civilizations Initiative that was proposed not so long ago?
It's very, I would say, natural evolution. If we want to have a peaceful world, in UNESCO we say we need to have intercultural dialogue. Intercultural dialogue can only be possible if we respect all civilization. As President Xi says, if there is one flower in the garden, it will not bring the spring, you know. All flowers need to bloom, and we need to really appreciate the beauty of all those flowers. So now China has 57 World Heritage Sites. But it's not about numbers and not about World Heritage Sites being only in China versus the rest of the world. And the rest of the world also, we have more than 1,000 World Heritage. But each one of these World Heritage Sites belong to the whole humanity. They have outstanding universal value. Like, for example, a World Heritage Site like the Palace Museum here in Beijing, very beautiful, wonderful, but also it belongs to the whole humanity, and all of us must care for it. The World Heritage, like Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan along the Indus River, it shows more than 4,000 years of this civilization, very beautiful. It belongs to the whole humanity. Or Angkor Wat in Cambodia, it belongs to everyone, and all of them are interconnected globally. So what we learn from one place, we can apply in another place. And also by bringing people together, like the 44th extended session of the World Heritage Committee was in Fujian, and I was there. Very well organized, even during COVID, and a wonderful meeting which brought together the world. There was a new World Heritage Site in China, Quanzhou. I will be visiting Quanzhou very soon, about so many sites within a site, and the history which links Quanzhou with Asia and the rest of the world. So very beautiful, but at the same time, I think the message is that by working together, by respecting all cultures, that's what Global Civilization Initiative is. Only then the world can progress.
And that will do it for this edition of The Hub on CGTN. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. I'll see you again soon.